I bought a used phone. Every photo in it is of me sleeping before I owned it. I needed a new phone desperately but couldn't afford one at full price. My old Samsung finally died after 4 years of loyal service. Screen cracked beyond repair, battery lasting barely an hour. A friend mentioned a place downtown that sold refurbished phones at deep discounts, no questions asked. I should have been more suspicious about that last part. The shop was wedged between a laundromat and a pawn shop, a narrow storefront with bars on the windows and a flickering neon phone sign. Inside, the walls were lined with glass cases displaying rows of smartphones, all gleaming like new despite being secondhand. The owner, a thin man with thick glasses that magnified his eyes to an unsettling degree, watched me browse without speaking. When I finally pointed to an iPhone 13 Pro that was priced at less than half its retail value, he simply nodded, unlocked the case, and handed it to me. "Has it been reset? Factory settings and everything?" I asked. "Of course," he replied. His voice was oddly soft for such a tall man. "Though there might be some cloud backup restoration. Hard to completely erase these days. Digital footprints, you know?" I didn't really know, but I nodded anyway. The price was too good to pass up, and the phone looked brand new, not a scratch or scuff mark anywhere. "I'll take it." He processed my payment and handed me the phone in a plain black box. No accessories, no charger, just the phone. "Enjoy," he said, his magnified eyes unblinking. On my walk home, I powered up the phone and was pleased to find it had 80% battery. As the owner had said, it had been reset to factory settings, though it was already connected to iCloud. I assumed it was just picking up the Wi-Fi networks around me automatically. I spent that evening setting up my accounts, downloading apps, and transferring what data I could from my old phone. It wasn't until I opened the Photos app that things got strange. The album wasn't empty. There were 47 photos, all taken within the last 3 months. All of me. Sleeping. The first photo was dated exactly 3 months ago. In it, I was asleep in my bed, the camera positioned somewhere near my bedroom door. The room was dark, but you could clearly make out my face, illuminated by what looked like the phone's flash. I sat up straight, a chill racing down my spine. I scrolled to the next photo. Again, me sleeping, but from a different angle, this time from above, as if someone had held the phone over my bed. The timestamp showed it was taken 2 nights after the first one. My hands were shaking now as I scrolled through more photos. Each one showed me sleeping on different nights. Some were zoomed in on my face. Others captured my entire body under the covers. In a few, you could see my open bedroom window in the background, curtains stirring slightly in the breeze. The most recent photo was from just 1 week ago. I hadn't even purchased the phone until yesterday. I dropped it on my couch like it had burned me. This wasn't possible. There was no way someone had been photographing me in my sleep for months with the very phone I now owned. It had to be some kind of elaborate prank, or maybe facial recognition gone terribly wrong, mistaking someone else for me. But as I reluctantly picked up the phone again and examined the photos more closely, there was no denying it was me. My bedroom. My sheets. The small scar on my chin visible in the close-ups. Even the book I'd been reading last week was visible on my nightstand in one of the most recent photos. I checked the phone's information, purchased new 18 months ago, according to the serial number. So who had owned it before me? And how did they get into my apartment night after night to take these photos? I called the shop, but it went straight to voicemail. When I tried to look up the store online, I couldn't find any trace of it. No website, no reviews, not even an address. It was as if it didn't exist. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat up in bed with all the lights on, the bedroom door locked, a kitchen knife on my nightstand. I thought about going to the police, but what would I tell them? That my second-hand phone somehow contained photos from the future? Or that someone had been breaking into my apartment for months just to take pictures of me sleeping, and then coincidentally sold me the very phone they used? Around 3 a.m., exhaustion finally won out, and I drifted off. I woke with a start at 5:17 a.m. Something had disturbed me, a sound or movement. My room was still dark, but the first gray light of dawn filtered through my curtains. The bedroom door was still locked. The knife was still on my nightstand. But my phone was gone. I scrambled out of bed, turning on lights, throwing back covers, checking under the bed. The phone wasn't anywhere in the bedroom. I unlocked my door and searched the entire apartment, growing more frantic by the minute. I found it on my kitchen counter, perfectly centered, screen up. I hadn't left it there. I was certain I'd had it with me in bed. With trembling fingers, I picked it up and unlocked it. The Photos app was open. There was a new picture at the end of the album, taken at 5:12 a.m., just 5 minutes ago. It showed me asleep in my bed, from the perspective of someone standing in the same spot where I'd just found my phone. I dropped the phone again and backed away. This wasn't possible. I'd been alone in my locked apartment all night. Unless I hadn't been. I checked every window, every door. All locked from the inside. No signs of forced entry. No places where someone could hide. I was alone now, at least. Throughout the day, I tried to convince myself I was overtired, that I must have sleepwalked and taken the photo myself somehow. But deep down, I knew better. That night, I stayed at a hotel. In the morning, there was a new photo on my phone, me sleeping in the hotel bed. The next night, I stayed with a friend without telling anyone where I'd be. A new photo appeared. After a week of this, I was a wreck. Sleep-deprived, paranoid, jumping at shadows. I went back to the location of the phone shop, but it was now an empty storefront with a for lease sign in the window, as if it had been vacant for months. I bought a new phone, left the old one locked in a drawer, and went to stay with my parents in another city. For 3 blessed nights, no new photos appeared on either phone. On the 4th night, I finally slept deeply for the first time in weeks. When I woke, I felt renewed, like the whole experience had been a bizarre nightmare that was finally ending. Until I checked my new phone. In my photos was a new image, taken at 3:33 a.m. It showed me sleeping in my childhood bed at my parents' house. But there was something different about this photo. In the dim light from the hallway, you could make out a figure standing beside my bed. Tall and thin, with glasses that caught the light, magnifying eyes that stared directly at the camera. And behind him, barely visible in the darkness, stood several more silhouettes, all watching me sleep. I've given up on phones entirely now. I use public computers when absolutely necessary. I sleep in my car most nights, changing locations randomly. Sometimes I don't sleep at all. But still, somehow, the photos keep appearing, on my work computer, on friends' phones when I'm nearby, even on digital display screens I pass on the street. Always me, sleeping, from the night before. Always with more watchers in the background. They're waiting for something. I don't know what happens when they decide they've watched long enough. And I don't want to find out.